Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying till now. So I will be taking you back to reality after all the metaverse talk that we've been hearing in the last presentation. So my name is Manal, and I manage the digital services within Khatib Alami. And basically, one of my major roles, being in charge of digital services, is to enable the digital transformation for the Khatib Alami architecture and engineering services. So I'll be talking about the use of GIS planning. So in terms of planning, when we're talking about planning, the purpose of planning is to guide the future development and growth of cities. And this means that linking space with the surrounding, with the buildings, social setting, and with the environment. It's just the first step in a cycle of planning. Okay, so it's just the first step in a cycle of planning, designing, building, and operating. So whenever we're thinking of planning, we have to take into consideration all the cycle to make sure that whatever we build from the beginning will support all the process. So the main challenges, again, here I'm probably mixing between what is being done as part of our planning project and some of the experiences that we've gained on supporting clients in building their systems to do master planning and management, of design and build activities. So one of the main issues basically is having updated and let's say accurate data that can be used for all the planning processes. So in many cases, the planning, all these workflows are disconnected workflows. It's very hard to collaborate, especially when you have multiple teams working on the same plan. It's very hard to support all the different activities that would be required within this process. So location, being, coming from a GIS background, location is very critical in such activities. So hence, GIS has an important role. And here we come to the concept of geodesign, where it's very critical to have all this data mapped, to be able to do all the designs, evaluate the multiple options, and act upon it and engage with all the different stakeholders, whether internally or externally. So again, GIS can support not just by building, this system of records, but taking it further to develop all the different insights and the engagement within the different stakeholders. So GIS can basically support in enabling the creation and management of the data, providing this high quality data, support in the visualization, the integration within the systems, and the collaboration. So one key aspect whenever we're working on a planning project, one key aspect is to start collecting all the different data that will be needed in this activity. So we built this data, whether we compile it from all the different sources. This is very critical. So we can start with the 2D and then also 3D. Taking, again, capturing the data from all the multiple sources, whether imagery, reality capture, mobile mapping, coming from the BIM and the GIS, all the GIS data that we might collect nowadays. There's so many data available. So collecting all of this and even in many cases integrating it with any existing sensors data, it will be all part of this consolidated multi-sectoral database that we're building so that it will support in the planning activity. Again, it's very important to mention BIM. So many presentations talked about BIM today. So it's very important to mention BIM because now the BIM and GIS, they're seamlessly integrated. So when we talk about the GeoBIM, it's a streamlined process that takes the project, that takes the whole project lifecycle through this BIM and GIS data consolidation. And it's very important here to mention that if we think about this as early as possible in the process, it's very important because it will help us set the standards for the BIM and the GIS as soon as possible, so that, as I said, all the data that we're collecting through this process, we will be able to use it later on through the whole life cycle of the project and the assets. Again, another technology that we're using GeoAI for the data extraction. So nowadays, when we're doing all these, aerial photography, collecting all the existing documents and data, it's really very hard, and it's to actually digitize all this data. So for this, we use, artificial intelligence, and we try to extract automatically all the data using different methods, whether, extracting it from the aerial imagery or even from documents, and also, again, using AI to do all the analysis later on for the placement, for example, of the assets and utilities. So now we've talked about the different technologies that we're using. I'm going to just give some examples about how we're using GIS. And again, these are some images extracted from our planning projects. So we use GIS, of course, to define the boundaries of projects, to analyze the site conditions and constraints and surroundings, whether close by facilities or existing services, slope analysis, the road and infrastructure. So all of this, again, this is coming from all the data that we've collected, and we're adding on top of it all the analysis tools that we've developed to support this planning activity. So we use, we develop models, whether, like using Model Builder or Python scripts that will help in these analyses. Of course, again, we're using ArcGIS, Urban, and City Engine, and these are the Esri tools that support also in the planning activities. So we implement rule-based 3D designs. We can do dynamic editing, we can do multiple what-if scenarios, and use it in visualization. This is very important because when you take this and show it to the client, okay, and you do with the client the what-if scenarios, you change the parameters, and the client will immediately see the changes that's taking place on your plan. Okay, it will help in the collaboration and in the approval process also. Again, such tools will help us in dynamic visualization and dynamic generation of planning schedules and budgets. These are another examples from a different project where we take this design into a more detailed plan and design, setting the zoning regulations and guidelines, defining the parcellation, land use and services, the utilities, and the different activities. So again, in here also we're using GIS to do all these outputs related to this stage. Another example, again, this is from a real project which was implemented for a client where they wanted to give approval, okay, for the development. So they have the master plan, and then somebody is coming to develop a project, and they want to get approvals. So they would go through a portal and they will submit the demand, for their project, for the different utilities, and then they will assess this demand versus the existing capacity, and they will do multiple scenarios, and then they will be able through this system to give the approval or disapproval, or provide suggestions, or maybe modify their phasing for the development. Again, another example is related to the collaboration. So once we have all this data created in 2D and 3D and 4D, because we'll be able to simulate the changes in time and even monitor the progress of the master plan development throughout the whole process. Again, this is, it's part of the whole experience is to, provide this virtual reality and augmented reality experience where we add, we augment the reality with all the plans and the designs that we have already built as part of this consolidated multi-sectoral database. again, with new technologies, and we're able to integrate all our designs with gaming engines. And again, in here, these are examples from Esri's outcomes where they integrate, the City Engine output with the Unreal Engine, for example, so that we can do all the simulation, for our designs. Again, it's very important, as I said from the beginning, that we're going to take all this data and all the developments that we made throughout the planning process into the full cycle of the development and the life cycle of the asset. Because as we know, the planning and the design and development stage is really very short when you compare it to the whole life cycle of the asset. So this data that we built and the tools that we've developed and the standards that we set from the beginning will help us to actually use the same system for all other activities like project development, permitting, operation and maintenance, and so on. And again, it's very important to mention that nowadays everybody is talking about the smart city and digital twin. So this is thinking from the beginning, from the planning stage, about how we're going to really support the digital twin and the smart city in the future. So the data and the tools that we've been building throughout the whole process will help us to support this 360 command center to manage this development once it's built. And of course, to use it throughout the tracking the whole process. Again, the whole thing, ultimately will lead us to have this digital twin that will enable our smart city solution. Thank you.